I hired the wrong guy. It obviously wasn't the right guy. And I don't want to. It's not centered on Seth. I didn't. I failed, and and I own that. I'm not. That's not earth-shattering news. Okay, now I got it. What I got to do to fix it, and so what do we have to do as a staff now? And I think this staff has done a really good job of trying to figure that out, get better every week, put together a great game plan, but also figure out, okay, what does this group of guys, what is this team, what can we do? What do we need to do this week? Because what we need to do this week might look a little different than what we needed to do or what we could do a week ago.
Well, that's about as candid as Brent Venables has ever been in his 3-year tenure as the head football coach at the University of Oklahoma. Parker Thune and Jesse Crittenden here with you. This is Quick Slants on the OU Insider YouTube channel. Jesse, it's interesting. We're more than a month removed from Seth Littrell's dismissal, and BB's right. It just didn't work. For one reason or another, Seth Littrell was just not the right guy for the job at Oklahoma, and that was a lesson that had to be learned the hard way. But it's interesting that we're more than a month removed from it, and I get that conversation gets dragged back into play because the Sooners are on the verge of hiring another OC, but certainly interesting, and no doubt something that a lot of fans are going to have increased respect for the head ball coach after, given that he's willing to just come out and say, hey, look, I see everything that you guys see. That was a miss.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's, if you've followed OU football over the last or this season, and you have seen how this offense has plummeted to one of the worst in college football and everything that led to Seth Littrell's dismissal, Parker, I think that was something that fans were looking for was for Brent to take some accountability that was a miss. And Parker, you and I have talked about it before. There was reasoning, there was logic behind that hire when it was made. But the reality is, in hindsight, you can say it's 2020, it didn't work. And you can look at what has happened over the last month since Littrell was fired as proof that it didn't work. Now, has the offense turned it around and become one of the best in college football under Joe John Finley? No, that hasn't happened. But what I think you have seen over the last month, and what you really saw and how it came together against Alabama, is this offense has found an identity, and that's running the ball. And they stuck to it on Saturday. And I think that's almost more than anything, Parker, is regardless of any rationale or logic that there may have been to hire Seth Littrell, the offense was just chaos. And on Saturday, it was remarkably simple and effective, and it worked. This team has run the ball really well. And Parker, as much as it's good to hear Brent Venables take accountability, because I think that's something that's hard for head coaches to do, I think at the same time, given that performance on Saturday, it's two things. It's one, what would it have been like if Seth Littrell had never been hired? Where's OU at right now? But then two, has everything that's happened over the last few weeks, could that give Brent Venables some wisdom and serve as kind of a baseline for how they handle things moving forward?
And we'll circle back around to the OC conversation in just a moment. But obviously, another huge talking point this week is the emergence of true freshman running back Xavier Robinson. Crossed the century mark against Alabama on Saturday, scored both of the Sooners' offensive touchdowns in that football game. And it took 10 games for Xavier Robinson to start seeing the field in a substantial capacity. But ever since he did start seeing the field in a substantial capacity, he's been a revelation for Oklahoma. And Brent Venables admitted in his presser today that he's asking a lot of the same questions that fans are asking after Robinson has come out of nowhere to provide a lift to this Oklahoma offense.
And so I mentioned Quentin Griffin. We couldn't tackle him on, and right, nobody recruited Quentin. Not very many people recruited Xavier, not at least really highly thought of schools. He wasn't highly, in this state, he was rated maybe the third or fourth best player in the state. But I think Iowa State was one of his best offers, committable offers. And anyway, Xavier might know more than me about that. But Quentin Griffin came in here as a backup on his high school team, but we couldn't tackle him on defense in 99. We weren't good at tackling anybody in 99, but we certainly couldn't tackle him. And then it took maybe 2 or 3 running backs that got hurt, and finally Quentin got his opportunity. I know we weren't very good at coaching back then either, but then he got over there and had a good finish to the year. And then next thing you know, it becomes at one time, I think when he finished, he was maybe the 5th all-time in rushing yards in the history of Oklahoma. It was pretty good. We've been good at running back, but those dumb coaches in the first part of his career didn't know what the hell they were doing, and he was stuck on the scout team. And so we finally got out of our own way because of injuries, and he got in. And sometimes that happens. But also Xavier didn't have this amazingly smooth start. Eli Bowen and Jaden Jackson, on the other hand, they came in, they knew the playbook. They took great detail, or took to the meetings with great detail, prepared. When they got in as freshmen in the spring, they did really well. You heard us brag on those guys at that time. Limited amount of opportunity, and but those opportunities grew because of when they did get their small window of opportunity, they really capitalized on that. And Xavier took him a little longer to do that, but thank goodness, right? Better late than never. And DeMarco finally smartened up, and I'm just having some fun. Give me a break, right? I need to be able to do that just a little bit. I have, trust me, I ask the same questions, and but anyway.
At least at face value, Jesse, the Quentin Griffin comparison is a little unconventional, no doubt, but the parallel does make sense because, like Griffin, Robinson has had to earn his playing time the hard way. Didn't show up and have anything handed to him. He was number 6 on the depth chart to start the year at the running back position, and now here he is. There's a very good chance that he might start for the Sooners come the season finale this Saturday against LSU.
Yeah, and Parker, I asked Brent about Xavier today, and I tried to phrase it the nicest way I could. I asked Brent, has there been a surprise? Has it been surprising that he has played so well? Which was the nice way of saying, why hasn't this dude been playing all year? And I actually thought Brent Venables' answer was pretty revealing. I don't think they expected this. And I think as much as you talk to people and they'll tell you that he may have the best work ethic on the team, a lot of them will tell you that he works harder than anybody. The reality is, when he got here in the spring, going through the summer and fall camp, he just wasn't the guy that he is now. And I also think Brent, as much as Brent, I think, was being a little tongue in cheek about what he said with asking DeMarco kind of the same question. At the same time, I do think there is a trust that Brent Venables has in this coaching staff to evaluate their position groups. Now, does that mean somebody like Xavier Robinson is playing later than they should? Maybe. But I do think more than anything, he's been a revelation the last couple of weeks. I really don't know if they beat Bama without him. I think he has done everything this offense has needed to do. And Parker, one of the things that Brent talked about was, as much as Javonte Barnes had done some good things, as much as Taylor Tatum has done some good things, Xavier Robinson's kind of been the whole package. And regardless, as a true freshman, whether he should have been playing before now or not, you are almost never going to get a true freshman that puts it all together: speed, falling forward, physicality, gaps, fundamentals, all of that stuff. And that's what's happened. And I think it's kind of a way to encapsulate this season is, if Seth Littrell hadn't been hired before now, what happens? If Xavier Robinson had gotten playing time earlier, what happens? But the reality is, he's come on at the right time.
He has, and against Missouri, you really saw it when the Sooners had nothing else going offensively. Xavier Robinson was the one guy that was able to find a rhythm, and he has stayed in rhythm ever since. The Sooners have needed someone to emerge in that backfield with Javonte Barnes banged up and Gavin Sawchuk just not the guy he was a year ago. Xavier Robinson's emergence has been unexpected, but very necessary for Oklahoma. And you would expect that he will tote the ball double-digit times again this weekend against LSU, because what this offense demonstrated against Alabama is that they've gotten to the point where they're not going to try to get cute. They're just going to ride the hot hand. They're going to stick with what works. And right now, what works is Xavier Robinson between the tackles. What is Brent Venables looking for in his next offensive coordinator? Here were his words.
Something that gives you the right kind of balance: run, pass, efficiency, ball control, explosiveness, quarterback friendly. To me, you look at, systematically something that you don't have to have a generational 5-star best quarterback in the portal every year to have a really successful, efficient offense that gives us a chance to win our conference. Compete at the highest level, to be an offense that can do its part to help us get to the playoffs and win. And so I don't mind having a generational 5-star best guy in the country at quarterback, but something that maybe people have proven have some type of a track record that shows that, man, we lose that guy, this is an offense that still produces and puts stress on a defense and scores points, moves the ball. Yardage may or may not be important. Again, we look at the things I just said. Efficiency in all the right spots, good in the red zone, good on third, fourth down, has good ball control, can make the explosive plays, can win games, do the things that's necessary to win games. But I like an offense that has some flexibility and win different ways. And so if that looks like 5 wides, and that looks like ninja, if that looks like I-backs, if that looks like 13 and 14 personnel, if that looks like 12 personnel, all things are certainly under consideration. But again, I look at what does it take to win and compete in our league, against the best teams.
So you hit a lot of buzzwords there, Jesse. Efficiency, ball control. One word that Brent Venables didn't say but implied is diversity. Right, a guy that gives Oklahoma's offense multiple ways that they can win a football game. Right now, OU has one clear path to victory offensively, and that is to chew clock, lean on the run, and let the OU defense play its best ball. Hope that the OU defense is playing its best ball, and it was on Saturday, but that is the only way that Oklahoma is going to win football games here in 2024 against opponents in the SEC. High caliber opponents in the SEC. Next year, you would expect, especially with some of the weapons returning that aren't available right now, Nick Anderson, Jaden Gibson, and the like, that Oklahoma will have multiple different ways to win a football game offensively. And as we process who might be the next hire, it's clear that Venables is selecting from a pool of candidates that all possess those qualities in how they orchestrate an offense.
Yeah, absolutely. And Parker, was Brent ever going to say today, yeah, I'm looking for an air raid guy. I'm looking for a pro style guy. He wasn't going to say that today. But Parker, I think what he said was pretty interesting, because if I had to sum up what he's looking for, it's 2 things. It's one, having an identity. He talked about that a lot, and that's something this offense did not have. It almost sounds like it doesn't matter to him what the identity is, as long as there is an identity, something this offense can fall back on. And 2, you mentioned it, it's flexibility. It's the ability to change and grow and gradually go towards things that work as different things appear. Parker, I don't think either of us expected what was going to happen on Saturday, but what did this offense do? They leaned on the defense, they controlled the clock, and they ran the ball repeatedly. 50 carries, 11 passing attempts. And Parker, when you look at some of these guys that are linked to this offensive coordinator job, particularly Ben Arbuckle, a lot of people hear about the air raid style, and I think they think one thing. But the reality is, this is a Washington State offense that has ran the ball more this year than they've passed. And I think that's one of the things that Ben Arbuckle brings, is I think the ability to adapt, the ability to do different things week to week. And that's one of the other things Brent talked about, was not only being able to change week to week given on who the opponent is, but he praised the offensive staff for the last month really taking into account, okay, what do we have? It's not about injuries. It's about what do we have? What's the best way to win the football game? That came on Saturday. And I think for Brent, Parker, it's not about we have to do this or we have to play this way or this way. It's the ability to have an identity and then change as circumstances dictate. And I think the guys linked to the job provide that.
The nomenclature of the air raid doesn't really do it any favors, because people hear air raid and they think, oh, they're throwing the ball a ton. Well, it's not always true. And you don't have to look any further than Lincoln Riley's teams at Oklahoma for evidence of that. Collectively, over his 7 years calling the shots in Norman, they leaned on the run, I believe, at about a 54-46 split. So still pretty balanced, but there actually is a tendency to run the ball more than throw the ball. And you mentioned that is the exact same reality that exists for Ben Arbuckle's offenses at Washington State. So obviously some very qualified candidates in the mix for the position. We at OUinsider.com continue to believe that the most likely hire is Arbuckle. We're 4 or 5 days away from knowing for sure. We'll see how the rest of this process unwinds. And that, folks, is where I recommend that you go subscribe at OUinsider.com for all of the best intel and information on your Sooners. For Jesse Crittenden, I'm Parker Thune. This has been Quick Slants. We'll see you next week, folks.